No one on that battlefield believed mercy was still possible. The forest was silent, but it wasn't peaceful. Smoke clung low between the trees. The sharp smell of gunpowder hung in the air, and the ground was soaked with the weight of days of fighting. Somewhere in eastern France, near the collapsing German lines in late 1944, an entire American infantry unit had vanished. Not retreated, not reinforced. Vanished. They were completely surrounded, cut off from all supply lines. Their radio was smashed, and their ammunition was running desperately low. Every direction they turned led them deeper into enemy territory. German patrols were closing in, tightening the circle hour by hour. By morning, they would be wiped out or captured. Either way, their war would end right there. The men knew it. They could feel it in their bones. And then, something happened that none of them could have possibly imagined. From the tree line, a single German soldier stepped forward. His weapon wasn't raised. He didn't shout. There was no signal. Just a man in a Wehrmacht uniform, hands slowly lifted, walking completely alone toward the Americans. The instinct was immediate. Fingers tightened on triggers. One wrong move, and he would be cut down right where he stood. The officer leading the Americans shouted for him to stop. The German stopped. He spoke in broken English. "I do not want you dead." Silence followed. The kind of silence that stretches time, making every second feel like a minute. This had to be a trap. It just had to be. German forces didn't do this. Not now. Not this late in the war. The Americans had seen villages burned to the ground, prisoners shot, and surrender ignored. Trust had been buried in the mud months ago. The officer asked the only question that mattered. Why? The German soldier swallowed hard. Because if you stay here, none of you will survive the night. His name was Leutnant Franz Keller, and in the next few hours, he would risk everything: his rank, his life, his family, to save the very men he was supposed to destroy. Franz Keller was not a hero by training. He wasn't special forces. He wasn't part of some secret resistance cell. Before the war, he was a schoolteacher, drafted into the army like millions of other ordinary men. He had memorized battle maps he'd never truly believed in, saluted leaders he privately feared, and followed orders because disobedience meant certain death. But by 1944, Keller had seen far too much. He had watched teenagers sent running into machine gun fire. He had seen civilians executed for crimes that didn't even exist. He had watched wounded enemies begged for a sip of water in bed, and yet the war had hollowed him out, leaving a void where his humanity used to be. That morning, Keller had been part of a patrol sent to locate the missing American unit. Their orders were not to capture them. The order was to erase them. The command was clear: no prisoners. Resources were scarce, and time was running out for the Third Reich. But when Keller spotted the Americans hiding in the forest, something inside him stopped him cold. They weren't firing. They weren't advancing. They were just waiting to die. He recognized the look in their eyes. He had seen that same look in a mirror. Keller told his patrol that he would scout ahead alone. He lied, saying he heard movements somewhere else. As soon as his comrades were out of sight, he made his decision. He was going to help them escape. He approached the American position slowly, knowing that one gunshot from either side would end everything. When the Americans didn't fire, when they actually listened, he knew he had only seconds to convince them. He explained the situation quickly. German units were converging on their position. An artillery barrage was scheduled for their area just before dawn. Staying put meant certain death. The American officer, his voice tense, asked the question no one wanted to hear the answer to. "How do we know you're not lying?" Keller didn't argue. He didn't plead. He simply pointed behind them. "There is an old supply road. It's abandoned. It's not on your maps. I used it last year. It leads west through a ravine that patrols avoid." Then he said the one sentence that changed everything: "I will walk first." That was the moment the Americans realized this wasn't a trick. If Keller was lying, if this was an ambush, he would be the first to die. The decision was made. They moved at dusk. No lights, no talking. They wrapped their boots in cloths to silence their footsteps. Keller led them through paths no one else knew existed. Between burned-out villages, along dark drainage trenches, across open fields still littered with shattered equipment, and the bodies of those left behind. Every sound felt like an alarm bell. At one point, voices echoed nearby German soldiers, laughing, completely unaware they were just meters away from the enemy. Keller froze, raised his fist, and waited. The Americans held their breath. One sneeze, one cough, one snapped branch, and it would all be over. But nothing happened. They kept moving. At a checkpoint, Keller did the unthinkable. He walked up to the guards alone. The Americans watched from the darkness as the man who was saving them casually spoke with the men who would execute him on the spot if they knew the truth. He joked about paperwork, complained about the cold rations. A few minutes later, the guards waved him through. Keller signaled, and they crossed. But the danger was far from over. Near the ravine, flares suddenly lit up the sky. Someone had spotted movement, not them, but close enough. Searchlights began sweeping across the trees. Gunfire cracked in the distance. Panic surged through the exhausted soldiers. Keller didn't hesitate. He led them straight down into the ravine, slipping through mud and ice, crawling on their hands and knees when necessary. One American slipped, nearly crying out in pain. Another caught him just in time, clamping a hand over his mouth. Hours passed like this. Finally, just before dawn, Keller stopped. He pointed ahead. "Beyond that ridge," he said, his voice a low whisper. "You will find your lines." The Americans stared in disbelief. They were alive. Against all logic, against all orders, against everything the war had taught them, they were alive. One of the soldiers stepped forward, his hand shaking. "Come with us," he pleaded. Keller shook his head. "I cannot." They didn't understand at first. But Keller did. If he crossed that line, he wouldn't be a soldier helping the enemy. In the eyes of his country, he would be a traitor. And traitors didn't just die. Their families paid the price. Keller straightened his uniform. "This war will end," he said quietly. "Someone must live with what we did." Then he turned around and walked back into German territory, completely alone. The Americans never learned his fate. Some believed he was caught days later and executed. Others hoped he survived, vanishing back into civilian life when the Reich finally collapsed months later. No records confirm either story. What we do know is this: an entire American unit survived when survival was impossible. Years later, veterans from that unit spoke about the night they were saved by the enemy. Many said it changed them forever. It shuttered the simple idea of good and evil they had carried into the war. Because in the middle of one of history's darkest conflicts, a man wearing the wrong uniform made the right choice, and no monument bears his name. No medal was ever pinned to his chest. But dozens of men went home, had families, and lived full lives because of him. So the next time history feels simple, remember Franz Keller, a soldier who was trained to destroy but chose, for one night, to save. And ask yourself, if you were standing in his boots, would you have done the same? Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing for more forgotten histories. We'll see you next time.